promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Bamako. Good afternoon and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM in Dakar, Senegal and worldwide at wadr.org. I am Atia Winimbila and you're welcome to Newslink. Here are our headline stories. Malians pay their final respects to the late Defense Minister Sadio Camara today in Bamako.
This valiant officer served Mali with loyalty, courage and dignity.
Police in Benin arrest several suspects for torture of a young lady in a viral video. Mayor of Matam in Guinea appears in court for embezzlement of billions of Guinean francs. And Togolese opposition coalition calls for end to current regime. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and many more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Many thanks once again for joining us. Now, Newslink begins in Mali, where national and military funeral rites for the late General Sadio Camara is underway in Bamako. The national tribute in honor of the former defense minister brings together top military personnel, statesmen, religious and traditional leaders, members of the Transitional Legislative Assembly, and the diplomatic corps. Now, my colleague Sanku Lejanko has been monitoring the situation in Bamako. He joins me in studio. Sanku, tell us what exactly is happening.
Thank you for having me. First of all, like you rightly said, currently there is a tight security in Bamako. As you already know, the Army General was among several victims of the April 25 coordinated attacks by the armed groups that targeted areas and critical facilities in so many places, including Bamako, Kati, Goa, Kidal and several other places. Well, speaking just minutes before we come on air, Prime Minister Abdoulaye Maiga immortalized the late Army Chief for his contributions to the fight against terrorism. Take a listen.
There
is no need to reveal any state secret to acknowledge the decisive role played by General Sadio Camara in rebuilding Mali's defense system in the effort to reclaim national sovereignty. A field officer deeply shaped by operational realities, he was profoundly marked by the occupation of northern Mali. General Camara emerged as a key figure in strengthening the armed forces, working closely with the highest authorities of the state. He helped redefine Mali's strategic defense priorities and gradually became one of the most emblematic figures in the struggle to fully restore the country's sovereignty. His calm but constant presence embodied a firm commitment to restoring peace and relentlessly confronting security threats across the country.
That was Prime Minister Abdoulaye Maiga. I still have Sanku Lejanko, my colleague, in studio with me. Sanku, for our listeners who don't know who General Camara was, tell us.
Well, General Sadio Camara was a central figure in shaping Mali's security strategy. Well, his focus on sovereignty and military strength helped project the image of a resilient state in the face of asymmetric threats that Mali and other countries have been going through. The vision translated into the building and reinforcement of key military bases across the country. Among them is a very discreet,
but
influential strategist.
Right?
He was also a pillar of the joint force of the Alliance of the Sahel State, that is the AEA member countries. He's a very pivotal member of this, this program.
So with all of that, Mali is definitely going to face a challenge of moving forward, right?
Absolutely. Atiwin, they're going to face, because from now on, Mali will face the challenge of moving forward without him, a pressure from armed groups, as the pressure grows, just like we've seen on Saturday when they attacked several installations at a go. Fighters from the Azawad, for example, Liberation Front, have already pushed for the withdrawal of the Africa Corps mercenaries from Kidal, leaving the Malian army with a daunting task ahead. Now that he's no more, it's even more difficult for the country. For many in Mali, the late army chief, Sadio Camara, will truly and greatly be missed.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Sanku Lejanko is my colleague in the newsroom.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's bring you some more happening stories. Reporters Without Borders, RSF, has just released its 2026 World Press Freedom Index. Now, the latest rankings underscore both progress and persistent challenges in West Africa's media landscape, especially in the context of political transitions, security concerns, and increasing pressure on independent journalism. Leading the region is Ghana, followed closely by Cabo Verde, reflecting the relatively strong commitments to media pluralism and journalistic independence. WADR's Veronique Njai is currently at the launch. She joins me via phone. Vero, tell us, what does the report say? What are the key elements of this report?
Hello, Atiowin. Well, the report says that Ghana, like you rightfully mentioned, is leading, followed by Cape Verde. Surprisingly, we see the Gambia third, even though we've seen the issues that have been reported in the Gambia lately regarding press freedom and media regulation. The Gambia still maintains third. We have Cote d'Ivoire fourth and Liberia fifth. We also have Mauritania sixth. Senegal dropped by 4 points, and Senegal is seventh in West Africa. Sierra Leone, Togo, Guinea-Bissau, Burkina, Guinea, Nigeria, Benin, Niger, and Mali. You see that the AES countries are really, really struggling when it comes to ensuring press freedom in their countries because of the reports of arbitrary arrest and journalists in detention. They did mention the journalists that were in detention in these countries and how they calling on all organizations to help with ensuring the release of these journalists. The report, however, is based on a number of indicators. RSF was looking out for the political context in these countries. That is the political interference of these leaders in the work of journalists. There's also the legal framework, the economic context again, and also the social, cultural context. And lastly, the safety of journalists. In these countries, are journalists being arbitrarily arrested, facing violence, or being harassed?
I see. Well, thank you very much, Veronique Njai. Currently at that press conference, she'll definitely bring us a more comprehensive report in our subsequent bulletins. It's interesting to note that a country like Senegal has fallen about 4 places. I'm sure we'll get more analysis on that in our subsequent bulletins. Let's now go to Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu has approved a $1.5 million relief package for victims of the recent attacks in Plateau State. The amount, equivalent to 2 billion naira, comes as the Inspector General of Police visits neighboring Benue State following fresh attacks. Let's join WADR's Abuja correspondent Yachenu Sasetu for the details.
Nigeria's presidency says a 2 billion naira, about $1.5 million relief package will go to victims of the latest attacks in Angwan-Rukuba, Jos North, in Plateau State. President Bola Tinubu has again condemned the violence, promising that those behind it will face justice.
And I believe once we have a state police, enforcement of laws and others, will take care of some of these problems. We use the instrument of office to deal with them.
But even as those assurances are made, attacks persist, leaving more communities grieving and displaced. In Agatu local government area of Benue State, a traditional ruler, his wife, his son, and 2 others were killed in a late-night raid. Agatu local government area chairman Melvin Eje is calling for urgent federal intervention and a stronger security presence on the ground.
We've had this cry, we've gone on peaceful protests demanding that the people of Ugumobo, Ijima, Ikpele, Opopolo, Ogbai, in Agatu West local government need to go back home.
Responding, Assistant Inspector General Milad Ntawaye says operations are ongoing to restore calm and tighten security.
If that is all harnessed together, where members of the community don't feel heavy to pass information up to security agencies, and security agencies don't feel different from members of the community, it is most likely that we are going to nip crime and criminality around the Agatu general area.
As insecurity spreads across the country, stakeholders are urging sustained action and long-term solutions to end the cycle of violence. For WADR, Yechenu Sasetu in Abuja.
Still in Nigeria, the opposition African Democratic Congress, ADC, is assuring supporters of victory as the Supreme Court prepares to rule on its leadership crisis later today. The case pits former Senate President David Mark against a rival faction led by Nafiu Bala. The party says it remains confident of appearing on the ballot ahead of the 2027 elections. Now, this dispute has drawn in the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, which suspended recognition of the party's leadership. The Electoral Commission's decision follows a directive from the Federal High Court barring it from engaging with a contested caretaker committee. With the ADC primaries just around the corner, the Supreme Court's verdict today will be crucial for the party's political future. Let's cross over to Benin, where several suspects have been arrested in connection with the torture and burning of a woman captured in the video. The incident, widely circulated on social media, has triggered outrage nationwide. Authorities moved swiftly, with the Republican police launching an investigation and appealing to the public for information. Francis Boniface completes the story.
Police say 6 people were arrested and brought before the courts for the repression of economic offences and terrorism. The suspects have all been placed in pre-trial detention and are due to appear on May 15 before the court's criminal chamber. They are being prosecuted for rape, assault and battery, and the distribution of images related to the commission of crimes. The case, which has reignited debate over violence against women and girls in Benin, has sparked reactions from activists, feminists, and women's rights organizations. Women's rights activist Nelly Dejinu says she hopes justice will be served and that the case will set an example.
In fact, he's accused of stealing a phone theft, alright? But then it escalated. She was raped, tied up, beaten, restrained and finally burned between her legs, all while being filmed, with comments and laughter. I struggled to watch that video. This is clear evidence that when people talk about violence against women, it is not for show. It is because such cases happen every day and it feels like the situation is getting worse. Today, they were brought before the special prosecutor and remanded in custody. They are still suspects and we now await the verdict.
Human rights and women's organizations are calling for stronger action against the normalization of violence against women and girls in certain social spaces. They are also urging the establishment of effective mechanisms to better protect women.
A report by our Cotonou correspondent Aziz Adam Sule, voiced by Francis Boniface. In Guinea, the mayor of Matam commune in Conakry, Bandra Kone, has appeared in court for the very first time. The longtime supporter of Guinean President Mamadi Doumbouya is being prosecuted for alleged embezzlement of public funds. He is being tried alongside other accused persons. Christopher Aticho has the details.
Badra Kone, mayor of the Matam commune in Conakry and a candidate from the ruling coalition in the local elections, was brought on Wednesday before the court for the repression of economic and financial offences, CRIF, a supporter of President Mamadi Doumbouya, along with several of his collaborators. He is accused of embezzling 240 billion Guinean francs. These funds were intended to finance several major development projects in Matam. Appearing before CRIF, the suspects were placed in pre-trial detention after being questioned for a week by the Central Directorate of the Judicial Police. Their defense lawyers have firmly rejected all allegations. The defense had requested provisional release for Badra Kone, the mayor of Matam, so he could participate in the campaign for the local elections. But the judges rejected the request. After hours of debate, CRIF decided to send the case back to the public prosecutor for the opening of a judicial investigation, citing the complexity of the case. In the meantime, the mayor of Matam and his co-accused remain in detention.
Christopher Aticho voiced that report filed by Cherno Alpha Ibrahima Balde. You're listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM in Dakar, Senegal, and online at wadr.org. We're also live on social media on YouTube. You can also follow us across social media platforms. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Malians pay their final respects to late Defense Minister Sadio Kamara today in Bamako. Police in Benin arrest several suspects for the torture of a young lady in a viral video. And Mayor of Matam in Guinea appears in court for embezzlement of billions of Guinean francs. Still ahead, we're in Togo, where opposition coalition is calling for the end to current regime in the country. We also have guest interview and sports. Do stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's now go to Togo, where the opposition dynamic for the Majority of the People coalition is calling for an end to the current regime. At a press conference in Lomé, opposition leaders criticized the government's leadership record and raised concern over what they describe as setbacks to democracy. The coalition continues to reject recent political changes, arguing that they deprive citizens of the ability to directly elect their leaders. Imo Edet has the rest of the details.
3 days after the celebration of Togo's 60th independence anniversary, the Dynamic for the Majority of the People DMP coalition has announced what it calls 60 years of monarchical dictatorship in the country. The political group is referring to the father-to-son succession at the State House. Opposition figures are calling for an end to the rule of Faure Gnassingbé, who succeeded his father Gnassingbé Eyedema and has led the country for 21 years. According to Professor Adovigwe Akwe, the statement by the DMP comes amid heightened tensions between the government and socio-political actors. A controversial constitutional change introduced 2 years ago, which shifted the country from a presidential to a parliamentary system, continues to be strongly criticized by the opposition. The constitutional overhaul scrapped the presidential election altogether, replacing it with the powerful role of President of the Council of Ministers, a position currently held by Faure Gnassingbé. They argue that the system undermines democracy in Togo and is designed to keep Faure Gnassingbé in power indefinitely.
Imo Edet filed that report. From Togo, let's go to Ghana. The Journalists Association has announced plans to head to the Supreme Court over what they describe as the growing abuse of the Electronic Communications Act by security agencies to target journalists. The association says the move is driven by rising concerns within the media over arrest and what it calls intimidation under the law. It adds that seeking a definitive interpretation from the Apex Court to address the recurring issue will finalize it once and for all. From Accra, Dede Tete has the details.
Concerns are growing within Ghana's media space over what journalists say is a troubling pattern of arrest linked to their work, raising questions about state power and press freedom. The Ghana Journalists Association says the increasing use of provisions under the Electronic Communications Act, particularly those on false communication, is creating fear within the profession and could undermine investigative journalism. Speaking at a media engagement with National Security, GJA President Albert Jumfor warned that applying the law this way risks turning civil matters into criminal cases, a move he says threatens Ghana's democratic gains. He insists the law was not intended to be used against journalists in the line of duty, adding that provisions such as Section 76, which makes it an offense for a person to knowingly send or spread false information through electronic means, are being misapplied to target reporters over their work. The association also warns the trend could erode gains made after Ghana repealed the criminal libel law, which moved defamation cases from criminal to civil courts. The GJA says it is now seeking clarity from the Supreme Court on whether the law can be applied this way, a decision that could shape media practice and freedom of expression in the country. Here is GJA President Albert Jumfor.
We are filing processes in the Supreme Court for the Supreme Court to give us review on this act so that we will all be clear as to if the act was made for journalists or it is that the security agencies are now using backdoor. They've now found some solace and comfort in this act and using it to go after journalists in this country.
The Ghana Journalists Association further cautions that the continued use of the law against journalists could create a chilling effect, discouraging critical reporting and weakening public accountability. For WADR, Nade Tete, Accra.
Now, the West Africa Center for Public Policies has launched its inaugural report on the ecosystem of public policies in West Africa. The document, backed by Trust Africa, offers a comprehensive assessment of the region's policy environment, and we'll dig deeper into this under the guest interview segment, so do stay tuned to Newslink. For now, however, it's time for Press Review.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
We're back in Accra, where WADR's Nadede Tete brings us the Ghanaian capital's press review and the headlines making the waves.
Greetings, welcome to the newspaper review segment. We'll start off with the Daily Graphic newspaper front page. $150 million World Bank Sea Defense Project will provide relief. President Mahama assures Anglo tidal wave victims as he inspects devastated Fuvume communities, promising immediate dredging of the estuary. Other stories here on the front page: World celebrates Utumfor, and invest in human capital and infrastructure to boost cancer treatments. That's according to the GAIEC boss. The Ghanaian Times: illegal structures on waterways to go away. That's according to the Works and Housing Minister. Also here, National Development Planning Commission moves to finalize National Development Plan. Also here on the front page, Supreme Court dismisses bid to strike out Wesley Girls Board in hijab case. This is a case where an individual has taken the matter to court, questioning and accusing management of the Wesley Girls Senior High School of curtailing the right of Muslim girls in the school to fully express themselves in their religion. The Daily Guide newspaper front page: Iyoko picks up ex-Gihok boss. Also here, UCC lecturer and teaching assistant die in crash. Very unfortunate news coming from the University of Cape Coast. The Daily Post newspaper: Ghana stability restored and credibility regained. That's according to the Finance Minister, Dr. Kasiel Atto-Forson. The Daily Democrat: Ghana and IMF begin 6th review. Also here, Ghana boosts local gold refining partnerships. The Archives newspaper front page: pregnant woman dies at Kaswa Hospital over lack of bed. Family demands probe and justice. Very unfortunate news. Also here, police intercept over 11,000 rounds of ammunition at Nkwanta barrier. The Chronicle newspaper front page: armed robbers on IGP Yohonu's radar. Intelligence-led operations exposing miscreants. That'll be it for the newspaper review segment. Is back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Nadede Tete. Now time for guest interview.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
As mentioned earlier, a new regional report is putting the spotlight on governance and policy effectiveness across West Africa, offering a fresh assessment of decades of public policy since independence. The study highlights both progress and persistent hurdles, from weak governance and political instability to youth unemployment and reliance on external aid. Speaking to WADR, Deputy Executive Director Frederick Ndeki says the report provides a clear roadmap for a more coordinated, evidence-based policy targeted at the region's realities.
This was the launch of our report. The report was made from 2024-2025, and it was around the ecosystem of public policy in West Africa. Among the 15 ECOWAS countries, it covers 5, and we made our focus on countries like Senegal, Guinea, Ghana, Cape Verde. This was a baseline study on public policies. Our main question was, despite all the good strategies we have in our countries, why don't we achieve the results in terms of implementing public policies in the region? And the hypothesis we came up with is, it's not because we're lacking frameworks or the documents themselves, the strategies are not good. It's because of the implementation. It's because the implementations fail to achieve these results, and because there is non-appropriation by the citizens on law. And in framing these documents, it's top-down approach which has been prioritized, while it should be bottom-up approach. make sure that there is this appropriation by the populations and making it easy for them to make the public policies their own strategies. The most striking aspect of this report is that we can see that in some countries, investments are being made, but the results are not coming. Like in sectors like education, we have countries where you have the youth are the majority and they're still unemployed, not well trained. And these youths are being used by armed groups operating in some of the countries, like in the Sahel, countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. They are being used like war forces and this armed group operating in these countries and causing security issues these countries are facing. The same youth are being mobilized, trying to escape poverty from their country and immigrating, taking risks, and you can see most of them dying on seas, trying to cross the ocean to reach other countries in Europe and beyond.
If the recommendations are implemented, what would success realistically look like for these countries? Because I did see that there are recommendations for each country in the sub-region.
We'll see the targets of these strategies, public policy strategies, reached in many countries. We'll see results in terms of education or even health achieved in these countries. Instead of having a lot of investments in the security sector alone, now we'll see these sectors also having investment from public funds. The other thing we will likely see that there will be reduction of corruption in our countries because the governance sector will be improved, because we have good frameworks, we have laws, but we still have corruption undermining the development of our countries. So improvements will be seen in these sectors in terms of reducing corruption and increasing accountability from public officials.
Dr. Frederick Ndeki is the Deputy Executive Director of the West Africa Center for Public Policies. Let's now bring you some sports news. The Confederation of African Football, CAF, has unanimously endorsed Gianni Infantino for re-election as FIFA president for the 2027 to 2031 term. The decision was taken during a meeting of CAF member associations held in Vancouver, Canada, ahead of the 76th FIFA Congress. CAF says its members are united in their support for Infantino's leadership as global football prepares for the next phase of development. The endorsement signals strong backing from African football for Infantino's continued leadership of FIFA. And we have come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. Many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Maudo Ju for the technical assistance. Do continue to interact with us via social media platforms, X, Instagram, Facebook at WADR English. I am at Siewin Imbila. Coming up at the bottom of the next thing coming up is Enviroscope, to be followed by the second edition of Info Chez Vous at 1 p.m. Thanks very much once again for listening. Good afternoon.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.